It's an overview of this whole system of sacred calendars that I believe the Lord has set up. And he uses different calendars to time different things. And so I will just go ahead and start. So sacred calendars testify of supremely intelligent, all-knowing. The all-knowing creator part is these calendars were set up at the beginning of the world. I mean, it's the solar system, it's the planets, it's the sun and the moon. And they just happen to go around in such a way that when the great prophets are born, when the Savior's born, when the church is restored, when different things happen on God's sacred calendars, all this stuff in the sky is happening. And the calendars keep track of the sky, basically. There's a calendar for Venus, one for Mercury. Maybe before I even start, I'll just make a sentence on that, and then the rest is in the show. You might ask what a calendar is, because you think of it as just something where you plan your life a little bit. And yeah, there's 7 days in a week, and we have these things called months, but what has that got to do with anything? I just had a friend phone me this morning and say, the sun is rising farther and farther north every day. And I'm thinking, yeah, and I taught astronomy, and most of the kids in the class never had noticed where the sun rises in the morning, and it goes north in the, so we're out of touch, and the skies are so polluted, almost no one can see the sky much. It's polluted with light as well as other things. So anyway, we're kind of out of touch with the world, but it is an all-knowing creator because everything has been scheduled. And anyway, let's get on with showing. Okay, right off in Genesis, as the creation is described, God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs and for seasons." Okay, signs, things that represent something else, symbolic of, the Savior's birth, or that something's coming. And then for seasons is that's the calendar part, where that's just marking the time. And so I focus more on the seasons. I do the calendars. People ask me what the eclipse means this year. I have no idea what it means. I just know that you go to this certain place and you look up at this certain time, and it's really cool. So I don't know the meanings always, but just knowing what day it is a big deal. So I think Michelangelo knew a lot about God. That's God creating the sun and the moon. And that's sort of how I picture God. Anyway. A lot of serious. Okay, this is going to be kind of how I got into it. So this, you recognize what this is a carving of? What is this? Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. You see the plumes around the head of the serpent. The plumed serpent is Quetzalcoatl. Coatl is serpent, and Quetzal is a kind of bird. So what happened was, this was back in about, the book came out in 1980 by Tony Avini called Skywatchers of Ancient Mexico. And he looked up some of the legends about this Quetzalcoatl. I had always heard of him and sort of associated him with Christ. He's someone that the American Indians, the Indians all through the Americas, especially Central America, in Mexico, he comes around AD 100, in the 1st century AD, right at the time the Book of Mormon says that Christ went to the Americas. But the things that got interesting is he was born on the day one read on the Mayan calendar, and we're going to look at that in more detail, what that means. Someone's name to the Indians was the name, their kind of secret name, was the day they were born. So his name being one reed means he was born on the day one reed. And one of the first things I did is you look up the LDS tradition, if nothing else. It's somewhere between inspiration and tradition, but it turns out to be true that the church was April 6th. The founding day of the church was celebrating the birthday of the Savior. And if you look in 1 BC, when the year he would be born, April 6th was on one reed. And so that's an eye-opener. That's a start. That gets me interested and said, okay, let's look at this. He appears to a congregation of the temple. And by the way, Jesus, born on April 6th, begins teaching at Passover at the temple. Here was the one that hooked me right here. In the Aztec legend, they said the planet Venus represents Quetzalcoatl. I'm going to say Christ. And they'll say, and when it rises in the west, the Venus is both a morning and an evening star. Okay? And in the evening star, when it rises as an evening star, it's his birth. And then it rises very dim, and then it gets brighter and brighter. We'll look at this too. And then it kind of plunges into the earth rapidly after it's been its brightest. And they said that's what happened to Quetzalcoatl in life. He's about 30 when he starts his ministry. And then he dies 3 years later, right? And he's crucified right in the prime of life. And then, here's the thing, they said, and then he fought the forces of the underworld. He overcomes death. And then they said, when he rose, they didn't say it worked the rest of the time. This one point of astronomy they gave. And they said, when he rose from the dead, Venus, the planet, rose as a bright and morning star. I read that and I thought, this was way back before computers and laptops. This was the big mainframes. I had books with tables. You couldn't look on your phone and see where Venus was on April 6th, 1 BC. But I have these big tables to go through. And I look it up. Was Venus, in fact, rising as a morning star? Well, it wouldn't be the birth, it's the resurrection. So it's April 3rd, AD 33. Yes, it was rising very bright as a morning star. And I said, okay, there's something going on here. I got to understand this. That was about 1980. I've been doing this ever since. I've got over 150 papers on my website, and about half of them are on sacred calendars. My website's johnpratt.com, and that's where most of all my work is. I haven't ever written a book yet. I have zillions of papers, and I'm always a work in progress, you know. And so anyway, lots of papers. Okay, that's how it got started. I can go a little faster now, hopefully, or we'll never even make it. But so one of the tribes said his name was Jesus. So things like that have been preserved. He taught religion and medicine, great healer, promised to return. So everything in these sacred calendars is centered on Christ. And I mean centered, it's a chiasmus. So even the moon, where the moon is, the phases of the moon, if you go a certain amount of time forward and a certain amount of time back from the birth of Christ, they tie together. It's all of these calendars are centered on the birth of Christ. Almost all of them. This has been my guiding scripture. I will give you a pattern in all things that you may not be deceived, is in Doctrine and Covenants. I use patterns. There's patterns all over. The seasons are a pattern. Stars come in patterns. By the way, the constellations, those patterns of the constellations, the Book of Enoch, which got removed from the Bible by the Nicene Council because they thought it was too weird, talks about how an angel appeared to Enoch and revealed the constellations. They're not the musings of bored shepherds. Okay, that one looks like, I know, a house horsey or something. That's not where they came from. So they tell the story of the gospel They talk all about Christ and his holy angels. So these patterns are all through the skies. So here's two witnesses. As you know, if you live in this area, whether or not you're LDS, someone would have told you this. Even as the Bible is a testimony of Christ on the eastern hemisphere, the Book of Mormon is on the western. You have these two witnesses from two different hemispheres. The same thing works in calendars. Over in the eastern hemisphere, there's the main one is the Hebrew calendar. And there's a bunch of variations, but they're all based on a 7-day week, even the Hebrew. On the Hebrew calendar, only certain days, the year can only start on 4 of the 7 days of the week, for instance. Lots of different variations of that calendar of the Eastern. In the Western Hemisphere, they're not using the week so much. When they were keeping the law of Moses, yes, they used the week, and that's tied to the law of Moses. And the word week is mentioned once in the Book of Mormon, I think. But I think it was when the Savior came, he gave them two different cycles that are like a week. I'll talk a little more about this, but one of them is a 13-day count. So that one at the top where you see a wheel turning, the days are numbered from 1 to 13, and it just goes round and round. You never insert an extra day, just like the week. You never stick a leap day into a week. The week is 7 forever. It's not based on the moon. I know people around are saying, oh, it's based on the moon. No, it's not. It's a 7-day count. And that's it. The moon happens to fit that. That's nice, but the moon fit the week, not the other way around. And then there's another cycle. The sacred round has 2 wheels, and there's 20 pictures. And we'll get more to this. So the 20 pictures represent the days of life, birth and death, and things like that. So that is showing a calendar that actually has Sunday still in red, and we don't see that so much. It used to be a holy day. Now, some people now put Sunday at the end of the week so they can, have your partying at the end of the weekend, they call it. And the Saturday's the weekend. We worship on Sunday. I hear people still saying we keep the 7th day holy. No, we don't. Saturday's the 7th day. We keep the first day of the week holy because that's when Christ resurrected. They changed it after the resurrection. It was a big deal to change that. Anyway, okay, this is the Hebrew calendar. I didn't draw it the way most people do because I'm going to compare it to another one, but it doesn't emphasize the equinoxes and solstices. Equinox, autumn and fall, is March 21st and September 23rd when the days are equal lengths and nights and the sun rises in the east. Summer solstice is when the sun's way up north in the northeast when it rises, and the winter, of course, it's down in the southeast. But it divides us into 12 months. The Hebrew calendar is based on the moon, so the word month comes from moon, right? The moons. And their month is always starting just after a new moon. So if it's the first day, like right now, it's about probably the 8th or 9th day of the month, because the moon's about 9 days old. Meaning it'll be, when it's full, it's about 14 days old. The cycle's it's 29 and a half days. So if you know the month on the Hebrew calendar, you know where the moon is. Because they fit it to the moon, it's a lot iffier on the sun. And they'll put a whole extra month in about every 3 years to make it come out so that the seasons work. So the Hebrew calendar they put in a day or so extra to make the moon thing work, and then they'll put in an extra month to make it work for the sun. So it's a tricky calendar. It tracks both the sun and the moon. Our calendar, which to me was a big step backwards, and your encyclopedias will all say what a huge advancement it was to stop worrying about where the moon is And if you want to know where the moon is, you get a calendar with those little pictures, of where the moon is. In case you still plant your garden by the moon, because if you've done that, you find out there's reasons for that. It was not a step forward to get rid of the moon. Anyway, there are other calendars. Oh, there's a perpetual Hebrew calendar. Let's not talk about that. The regular Hebrew calendar wasn't finished. They did the best they could. Moses was given some rules on how to use it. Then they got dispersed all over the world, and they needed some kind of a standard calendar everybody could use. They did their best to come up with one. I think the real one is this one, but it's been restored. I skip that. It's one that's just a solar calendar. It keeps track of the sun almost entirely. So on it, however, it's still based on the week. This is described in the book of Enoch. And they describe it. There's like 7 chapters in the book of Enoch about how the calendar works. So I've made a computer model of this calendar based on what he says in the book of Enoch. And it turns out the Lord is using this. It's the thing with the week is it has 364 days, which comes out exactly 52 weeks. 365 is one day over that. This one always starts on a Sunday. Every year starts on a Sunday. Every quarter starts on a Sunday. Business people would love this because they love it if they're Christian or Jewish, if they keep track of the week. It's great because they do their business by weeks, and every quarter is the same. You can compare quarters. It's just a cool calendar. But with only 364 days, after about 5 years, you're a whole week off. It's more than a day off every year, right? And so after about 5 days, they put in an extra week, and then it comes out right again. So they don't stick in extra days. It's a whole extra week. But it really works well. The Lord is using this for different things. I haven't got it all figured out which is used for what. Do I want to go through all of this? So we did the 52 weeks, quarter Sunday, and extra days. Oh, that's the uniform. Okay, all of these calendars have a regular version and a uniform version. And this is worth explaining a little bit. The regular version puts in the extra weeks and keeps track of the sun. So when it says it's the spring solstice, it really is spring equinox. It really is about March 21st. It's the first Sunday after March 21st. Always starts on a Sunday, okay? Well, they're sacred things. Let's talk about, Hebrews have a Passover, and this has the Passover. In the spring, on the 14th day, there's a Passover ceremony, and you do certain things besides just killing a lamb and having a roast lamb dinner. There's things you do, like you go to Jesus would go to the wilderness at Passover. There's a fasting. There's a lot of symbolism that goes with it. Okay, suppose you have something in your life that needs that symbolism, but it's not springtime. Suppose it's the middle of winter, and you're going to go through a Passover thing. This uniform calendar does not put in the extra week. It doesn't keep track of the sun. It just always has 364 days. So it has its Passover go through autumn and winter and all around. It's not tied to the seasons. Okay? It's really useful if you're doing a Passover thing in the middle of winter. You look at this, it was Passover, and you wouldn't know if you didn't look at these other calendars. So all of them have, there's a uniform Hebrew. Every one of the regular calendars has a uniform version. So it's a standard, the Lord's using that too. So it does not actually track the seasons. So because of that, determining one day in history, and this is for all of the uniform calendars, They never add any extra days. So once you lock in what one day is, you know all of history, because you never add any extra days. So you just count 364 is forever. And so they're really useful that way, because it's been a lot of work for me to figure out how to insert those extra days. And part of it's not done yet. I don't have any evidence that this was ever used historically. The people who used the regular Enoch calendar were the Essenes. At the time of Christ, they thought that the Enoch calendar was the true calendar that just uses the sun. So they left the regular Judaism people. And so it's called the Qumran, the calendar of Qumran, was basically their attempt at doing the Enoch calendar. By the way, the Savior quoted the book of Enoch more than any other book in the Bible, more than Isaiah or anybody. And anyway, that's the one that got taken out. They flipped a coin between the book of Revelation and the book of Enoch, the Nicene Council. And they both said weird things like there's an angel on all four corners of the earth. They were very advanced in science in AD 300, and they knew the earth did not have four corners. So they were embarrassed by that, not realizing what that meant. Turns out there's four stars in the sky that were the four corners of the earth. And anyway, the Book of Enoch got lost. The Book of Mormon says some plain and precious parts were taken out of the Bible. I think the whole Book of Enoch is one of those. It was just taken out after the coming of Christ. Question?
A couple questions on the Enoch calendar. You said the Book of Enoch spends quite a bit of time talking about it. Are they using? Was that the uniform Enoch calendar or the
regular Enoch calendar? I don't know anybody that ever knew anything about the uniform calendars.
Okay.
I don't have any evidence that was ever. That's why I said not used historically. The other ones were, yes.
The other question is, do you have a specific source for the Book of Enoch that you prefer? 'Cause I know.
Yeah, Richard Lawrence, the old original one, 1830. I think he was a archbishop or something. His is great. All the modern people, there's a bunch of them. Charlesworth, R.H. Charlesworth, those are horrible. They're horrible for astronomy. The guys have no understanding of astronomy. For instance, the word sign, in the scriptures, the word sign means constellation. Enoch says, the Lord showed me the signs. The angel showed me the signs. That means the constellations, like what sign are you born under? That means things like Cancer or Scorpio or whatever. They had no idea that sign meant constellation, and so they just destroyed all the astronomy. So I'm prejudiced toward the astronomy. It's a lot better in R.H. Lawrence, and that's free. It's on my website.
You said it was Richard Barnes?
No, Richard Lawrence. Laurence.
You said it's on his website.
Yeah, it's on my website. You can buy it. It used to be at Deseret Book. I don't know what they do now, but it's sold in Mormon places. It's just nobody buys it. We don't even read the Book of Mormon enough, let alone. How many have you ever read the Apocrypha? How many? Can I see by show of hands? How many have ever read a couple the Apocrypha? When Joseph Smith asked the Lord, "Should I translate this?" The Lord, section 91, Doctrine and Covenants. The Lord said, "It's already translated fine. The problem is not with the translation." Okay, there's a lot. A lot of it is true. Some of it's interpolations of men. You got to read by the Spirit. If you don't have the Spirit, forget the Scriptures anyway. I mean, he didn't say that, but you need the Spirit to understand things. Some of those are great. Second Esdras in the book. I'd raise my hand and put that in the Scriptures and in the heartbeat. I got to go quicker than this, so we're not going to do it. I'm having way too much fun. Begin. It turns out the resurrection of Christ is going to turn out to be on Sunday, the 3rd of April, AD, and that is one spring on. Well, that's the one day I said you line up one day. That's one spring on the uniform calendar. You line up that day, and then everything else is determined. Okay, let's go quicker. Oh, this one's a fun one. The Jubilee calendar divides the year into 7 parts instead of 12. There's 2 sacred numbers at least. And it turns out that it's counting weeks. So you have 7 days. 7 times 7 days is 49. So you have a planting season of 49 days, watering 49, nourishing 49, tending. It's really, it's partly tending, but it's also transplanting. And that was too long of a word. I have to have short words because you put these things in columns. That's when everybody's transplanted. If you notice the Lord does that, he'll take this group and plant them here and a branch here. And it was right on the day that Lehi leaves. And anyway. Then you have grain, you harvest the grain. Jesus tells his apostles, we'll get to that in a minute. 49 grain, and then the wine, and then the olive harvest. When you add up 7 times 49, it's 353. You're short from 343. You're short 21 days from 364. So you put in 3 extra weeks. A mid-year, that's like Passover. An end year is like Tabernacles. And for no extra charge, you get a burning. There's a burning of the fields, folks. Both the first and second temples of the Jews, there was a burning, and both of them happened on the first day of the burning. They even say in the books that this is a historical calendar. The scenes, somebody was also doing this one. I think the scenes are doing this one too. Where does it say it? It says, I'm trying to remember the source, but on the 7 days of the burning, it says which tribes bring the wood. And it's Judah and Levi that bring the wood for the burning on the first day. And the temple was burned on the first day, temple of the Jews, and the Levites were the ones in it. So, this stuff, you see, this stuff is all planned out ahead. People, Nebuchadnezzar thinks he's coming in and burning the city, and it's like on the day. That's why it's a testimony of God's foreknowledge.
What about the Nauvoo temple?
The one I have there is the laying of the cornerstone of the Nauvoo temple. It's on that's on my website. At the very top on the left-hand side, it'll say religious chronology, and you click on that, and there's a bunch of dates that I've published and what's cool about them. And you can find out that date is on there, the laying of the Nauvoo cornerstone. And then you can click on the article about that and where I talk about that. This is also a map of the 7,000 years. Okay, this is what the pattern thing is. They will use it for a year, and then they'll use it for all 7,000 years. Planting is Adam up through Noah's time, the first 1/7 of the year. Watering, the time of the flood is in the area of watering, the millennium of watering. You divide that into 7 parts, and then you divide that into 7 parts, and the flood is on the second of the second of the second. Anyway, that's the watering of the earth, folks. Nourishing is Moses' time. Tending is transplanting, and that's where they go all over the world. Around 600 BC, it's not just Lehi. Jeremiah takes off with a group. Confucius, Lao Tzu, all over the world, all over the whole world, around that time, things are planted. Then the mid-year is the meridian of time when Christ comes. The grain, Jesus sends out his apostles and says, you're going to harvest the field. The field is white, ready to harvest. When he gets up to our time in the vines, the more usual one is he says, you're workers in the vineyard. Right? Go to work in the vineyard. And then, there's a burning coming, folks. And then there's a millennium. The olive is the spiritual one. That's the oil press. That's the sacred oil, anointings and things. Anyway, that's the millennium. Do you want to know where we are on
The
this?
vines. We're right by
The burning?
We're in the burning. The burning, when not that there's any connection here, but when Obama is elected, the burning started in September of 2008. And it's a 49-year period. And I expect everything to happen in the second coming stuff, including the burning and the whole deal. I'm just expecting it sometime in that 49 years. It could be after that. But the burning is going to be, I believe, in that time. Anyway, and you can ask yourself if we're all repenting and the world is getting better and better, or in fact if you should flee Babylon. And anyway, so
John,
same map for the...
What makes you say that burning started September 2008?
Oh, because I understand how the calendar works. It's all based on Christ. When you center it on Christ and you make it those lengths, and it's all based on those sevens, that's how it turns out. And the one funny story is in my paper, I wrote the paper 6 years before that and published it in a footnote. I said, that's where I put the burning, it's in a footnote. And I said it'll start on Sunday, the 28th of September, 2008. And on Monday, the next day, the stock market dropped 777 points. And my friend, who knew that I understand things, phoned and said, I saw your paper, I read the footnote, I knew it was going to happen. He said, you didn't say it was going to happen the next day, you know. And I said, I didn't know it had anything to do with the stock market. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know what day it is. And how many have read Jonathan Cahn's stuff? Anybody, Jonathan Cahn? Okay, so Jonathan Cahn picked up on that. And he said, oh, there was a fall 7 years before that, and there was a fall on that year. So he thought the bigger one was coming 7 years later in 2015. And I was chuckling because the Jews lost track of when the Jubilee is. They know the 7 years. They don't know which one is the Jubilee. And what he didn't understand is the one before, well, he didn't understand how it works. That what the big one was, the one he thought was the forerunner, that was it. Anyway, so we're 7 years ahead of where Jonathan Cahn thinks we are. But he's selling a lot of books, and, you know, but he didn't have enough. He didn't know to base it on Christ.
Can you tell us what paper that was that you explained all of that in?
It's called the 70th year, Joshua's 70th Jubilee. And it's in a footnote 13, I think. But anyway, it's footnote there. But that's where I go through the Jubilee calendar. And yep. Okay, let's move on.
That's on your website.
Oh yeah, all of these are on my website. And I have a search engine on my website, so you can put in stuff and you find a lot of things.
So, this is what I thought I heard you say. So in 2008 is when a 49-year period began.
Yes.
And it's sometime between then and 49 years from then that what?
The burning will be done.
Okay, gotcha.
And I don't know if that's going to include the second coming or not. That's a secret, I think. I'm not trying to find that out. But that's a lot of years from now still.
Yeah.
At the rate the world's going.
I've been surprised. People ask me, when do I think it's all going to happen? And I say 3 years ago, you know. And I'm sticking with that. You know, I don't see how we're still here. You know. 1 year with God. Oh, I just did that for you. We did all of these are 1 year with God. All of the time of the seasons and the minutes, all of them together are 1 year with God and not with man. That's what I actually just did. I forgot I had that slide. That is a map of the whole history of the earth. And it's like 1 year, right? It's 1 year, but 1 year with God is all of it together. It's all 7,000 years. So I believe that I will just explain the meaning of that scripture, or at least one version of it. Let's skip this. There's a priest cycle that began with Solomon's temple. They go through 24 weeks of rotating priests. That turns out it's a calendar, and it goes all through history. And so the day that Adam first, you can go back and get all of the birth dates of the big prophets. Adam, I don't have Eve. I bet you if I hunted I could find her because she's so important that you don't need the year. Adam's so important you don't need the year. Mary, Virgin Mary, is so important I didn't need the year. Everybody else, you got to give me the year, and then I can get the date. Why am I telling you that? Because the day Adam first breathes the breath of life is the first day of the pre-cycle. And so everything is, all these cycles line up. Let's skip that. I'm talking too much. Let's go to this one. Now we're going to go to the Western Hemisphere. Those were all Eastern Hemispheres, all based on the week. Back. If you have anything from Mexico, you will have this picture stamped on it somewhere. You will have an Aztec calendar. This is just the center of the calendar. The whole calendar is almost that thick again around it. I'm showing you this because of those 20 pictures around the center. There's a ring of 20 pictures. Those are the 20 days. That's the 20-day cycle that I showed you before with the pictures. It's called the Vientina. The Vien part is 20 and the Tina is like, it's sets of 20. And that's my modern pictures. You have to have some way to do it, like wind. I mean, I was laughing at their wind god. This is their wind god, and he's like a crocodile with propellers on his head, and that's really pretty cool, like he's a little helicopter guy. So then I thought, well, gee, what's our wind god? How do I draw a picture of the wind? Now that I've laughed at them, do I know anything better? And I kind of like theirs now that I've thought about it. The best I could come up with was that's our wind god. When I show that picture, that's Mr. Wind. That's what goes across the chart on your news weathercast. Light, wind, temple, dragon, serpent. These are the days of life. Light is conception. It's from the spark. It's also the first spark of an idea. These are symbolic. It's a pattern. Okay, but for life, it's usually conception. These 20 days, I'll show that probably next. That they go with the numbers too. Anyway, the second day is wind. He doesn't have his propeller on. That's a different one. But anyway, it's like a beanie with propellers. We made the same thing. The wind is the spirit. The wind is the quickening. When the woman can first feel the kicking, the spirit has entered the body. It's a football player. You know that stuff. That's the day of the wind. Temple is birth when you get your temple. Your temple is your body. You get your temple born. Dragon is youth, and it's really when evil first enters a child's life. It's before teenagers, I think. No, it's around 8 years old. Where the Indians taught this, that little children cannot be tempted. And their symbol, by the way, for evil was the dragon. The serpent was not their evil guy. The dragon is the evil guy. But anyway, and I've decided that's when the natural man is born, because it's the planets, everything has this cycle. The planets, let's not do planets. They have a retrograde where they go backwards. That's when the natural planet is born. And then it repents and goes forward. That's what, I've got mortality here. I need to update this. Serpent is really being born again. After you've gone backwards, you've been the natural man, you've been the teenager, you've gone evil. At some point in your life, you're supposed to repent and turn around, which is repent means, and go forward again instead of backward. The serpents, I believe, are the symbol because the serpent crawls out of its old skin and it's reborn. And how many animals crawl out of their old, some insects do, but not too many animals. Anyway, it's a great symbol of rebirth. And then the skull is death and resurrection. And the last symbol, number 20, I'm skipping some there, but the 20th one is when you become one with God. The name is Lord. And it's very much in the Hindu, they have the lotus flower as nirvana, is one with God. It's a flower. On mine, it's a rose. A wild rose is mine for flower. And I go the other way. I go clockwise because we tend to think clockwise. The Mexican one goes the other way. But anyway, so those are the names. And that shows how the 13 work with the 20. There's 2 wheels, so that the day right there is one light that where the numbers line up at the top. The next day will be 2 wind. So both wheels go around independently. In a way that looks strange, but we do the same thing with, with the day, Monday the 1st, and the next day is Tuesday the 2nd, and Wednesday the 3rd. We don't think of it that way. We think the first day of May, the second day of May. But if you did it with the week, it would be that. So it's really very similar to what we do. That's called the sacred round, the 2 together, the 13 and the 20 going around. I don't have it there, but it takes 20 tracinas, 20 tracinas to make a round of 260, and that gives you all the combinations of every number with every day. It's 13 times 20 to have it go through all of them, which is 260. They're both continuous end-ending cycles. These are used by Native American tribes from Alaska down to the bottom of Chile. This was their calendar. And there's a book about it called, by a lady named Raven Hale, the Sacred Cherokee Calendar. And she'll go into some of the meanings of things. She has an astrology that goes with it that it's pretty interesting. Enough of that. There's a Venus cycle. Let's see, this is what causes it. In this picture, the Earth and Sun are both stationary. Okay, so we're on a moving Earth, but pretend it doesn't look like it's moving to us. So think of the Earth as stationary but rotating. And the Sun, with that in mind, the Venus still goes around in a nearly perfect circle. And for half the time it's a morning star and half the time it's an evening star. You can see that down at the bottom when it's near the Earth, it only disappears in the sunlight for just a few days. It's somewhere between 0 and 8 days. When it's on the far side of the sun, it's more like 50 days that it disappears. And so, and it's really bright at points 5. Anyway, there's 9 holy places on the cycle. They're numbered there. And it's brightest at 5 and 8, where it's far enough from the sun to be high and bright, and it's close enough to the Earth to be really bright. So that's when you see it very high in the sky. At position 3 is where it represents birth. I've got that written below, birth. That's where it rises in the west as an evening star. It takes about 7 months to get up to position 5, and where it's really big and bright. So very slowly it starts dim, gets brighter and brighter, and that's where it's at its prime. And then you can see between 5 and 6, that's where it plunges into the Earth quickly and dies at number 6, and then resurrects, and then it's a very big and bright star at 8. Looking at that from Earth, there's the same 9 points. So you can see birth at number 3 over in the west, and it gets higher and higher until 5 prime. Prime doesn't show it there, but it's actually almost the highest in the sky. It didn't quite show that. And then it goes quickly down into death, and then it's in the underworld, and it looks like the underworld. I mean, you see it go into the ground, and then a few days later you see it come out of the ground. It looks like it's underground. Of course, it's how the Earth is turning and all of that stuff, but it sure looks like it's in the underworld. It's really cool symbolism.
Is this just viewable in the northern hemisphere?
Yeah, this is here. This is the northern hemisphere.
What about the southern hemisphere?
You have to adjust it somewhat, but it's the same, basically the same idea. I was 2 years in a mission in Brazil. I never got used to it. It's really different. What do we got? Is that north? So north, so the sun for us, the sun rises in the east and goes in that part of the sky, right? Southern part of the sky, and sets over in the west. So in Brazil, it starts in the east and goes in the north part of the sky and sets in the west, and I could never get used, I'm very slow at it. And so for me, I was always turned around, and I swore it always has to rise in the east, and it was going backwards. Anyway, it's hard to know how much, you really do depend on where things are. Anyway, it's stuff like that where it looks like it's going backwards or whatever, but it's the same. All 9 points. Jesus said in the book of Revelation, I am the bright and morning star. I, Jesus Christ, am the bright and morning star. Revelation 22, verse 16. Why would he say he's the bright and morning star? 9 key events in his life, from his birth to when he's accountable. Magicum, going to Egypt, baptism, resurrection, starting his ministry. 9 key points in his life are exactly the 9 sacred points in the cycle of Venus. So it's really cool. The point is, he's using this. The Lord is using these things, and we haven't known about them. Let's skip that. For instance, just one example. Isaac and Jacob are both born on when Venus is born, Jacob is born. A lot of the prophets, on their wives, Rebecca is born on the day that Venus is born. Miriam, there's a bunch of them. Abraham is a totally different time of year. Abraham's wife was a totally different time of year. And that baffled me for a long time. I haven't even done, he's supposed to be on a Jupiter calendar. I haven't even done a Jupiter calendar. I've done Mars, Mercury, and Venus. So I just figured, when I do Jupiter, it'll show up. I do the uniform Venus calendar. He's born on one birth on the uniform calendar, and his wife, Sarah, is born on one birth on the uniform Venus calendar. By the way, almost always the husbands and wives, they're just all on each other's birth dates and death dates, and there's one of their children on the same day. There's all tied together on these calendars. They're really useful. They're used. Let's skip that. I'm too long. Let's skip that. Okay, we're going to start looking at these as gears. If you read this, I taught astronomy. I have a PhD in astronomy, by the way, and I've taught astronomy at college. And the standard story is it's all random. There's a big bang. It's just, whatever was left over. It's no God. Forget the blind watchmaker. Nah. Boy, talk about a watchmaker. This stuff is down to quarter-day accuracy, where you can get all the prophets' birth dates and everything down to a quarter of a day. And you can round it off to full numbers of days in a very useful way. So Venus, the way I showed you in those pictures, if the Earth were still, it takes 584 days for it to go through its cycle. If you look up in an encyclopedia, it'll say it's 225 days to go around the sun. Well, we're not on the sun. We're on the Earth, and the whole thing was designed to be seen from the Earth. The sun, of course, is 365. We say where the Earth goes around the sun, but if you think of the Earth as fixed, and you watch the sun, it goes around through all the constellations once a year, right? It's just which one is moving. Well, it turns out 8 times 365 is exactly 5 times 584. So you have this 5 to 8 ratio of Venus years to Earth years. Rounded off that way. Same with Venus and Mars. Now Venus is it's a little less than 585. For the other one, we're going to call it 585 because that's a certain number. That's in multiples of 13. And Mars is exactly 780. 780 is exactly 3 sacred rounds. 3 times 260 is 780. All of the planets were designed using these calendars. I read that in the Mayan books. And when I first read it, I thought they were crazy. They said, the way God created everything was first he made the calendar, and then he created the planets to fit that. And I thought, whoa, I heard these guys were calendar freaks, but this is, they think the calendar is more important, than the solar system. Then I thought about it. Of course they're right. How are you going to plan a world? You're going to say there's going to be fall, we need a savior in the middle, we need a meridian, we need an end of time. A lot of these sacred calendars will have 20 holy days, and in particular, this was to me a huge discovery. This is the same picture now with the Hebrew calendar or Enoch, either one, around the outside. They have 20 holy days, and they match up in the same order as the 20 pictures. They're not scrambled. So in the fall, there's a Feast of Trumpets on the Hebrew calendar on 1 Tishri. It's the first day of the year if you start the day in the year, in the fall. They have the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year, the day that's the most spiritual day. It's the day that's the quickening, it's the spiritual day, the day of the wind. I won't go through them all, but all 20 of them line up in the same order through the year.
You have this on your website.
That's on my website.
What would you say?
And the name of it's called the 20 Sacred Days Testify of Christ. Pretty close.
20 sacred days to testify of Christ.
Yeah. Most of my articles are testify of Christ. Mars testifies of Christ. Venus testifies. 10 years ago, if you did a Google search for testify of Christ, who in the world is doing the most testifying of Christ, I was the number 1 hit. Gordon B. Hinckley was the number 2 hit. And I thought, the world is in bad shape if I'm the number 1 hit in the world. Instead of going to my head, it was more like, oh no, we're in big trouble, Anyway, I'm no longer the number 1 hit,
John,
but
I think
I'm on
it's
the...
interesting. I was going to say the eagle represents fullness, and
Yes.
the eagle is the symbol of the United States. The bird is.
Yes,
Isn't that interesting?
it is interesting, and I don't...
Wait, is that
There's so much, I don't have anything clever to say about that. I will say this, though, since you bring it up. Notice the circle is very important. The eagle is opposite the serpent. That is important. In Mexico, where did they found the city of Mexico? The eagle's got the serpent on the tree of life cactus. The one that baffled me, I thought, what's a vulture? That's usually called a condor, is in the vulture family. You can see that's the head of a vulture-type bird. And I thought, what's he doing here? Because, we don't usually... Kids don't say, I want to be a condor or a vulture, when I grow up. Maybe, are there schools that have the buzzard for their mascot? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But look, it's opposite death. And when I researched that, see, there's no feathers on the head of the vulture. The vulture is the one animal that can stick its head into death and be happy. And eating is waiting for it. There's something anyway, if you look at it, you can get lost in all the symbolism here. But everything is opposite stuff. Anyway, we got to keep moving. Let's skip this. Way too much. Okay, stars. There's also a star calendar. By the way, I should have a clock at somewhere so I don't totally... Anyway, if the sun comes up again before we're done, stop me. 8:22, thank you. And we're shooting for 7 to 9 was, I think, anyway.
Whatever you want to do.
Well, and we can stop when... there's a natural breaking point, and I'm not quite to it yet. For like a halftime or a break if we want. So there's 12 zodiac constellations. I've worked a long time to try to restore them. Astronomers changed them throughout the history. I mean, we're talking about Enoch. That's way before the flood. And they were handed down. The Greeks got them from the Egyptians. I've read the Greek stuff, and they admitted, oh, we changed where this was and that was because we thought it made a better looking person or something. You know, and so it's a lot of trouble. That's my best effort to get them right. Anyway, there's a star calendar every day of the year. I didn't actually show the stars on this, but just picture little dots on them. And from one little dot, you can draw the line up straight from the center of the circle. That circle around the outside is the path of the sun, clockwise. So starts in the Maiden, goes around Scorpio. Once a year, the sun travels around that circle. It's called the ecliptic. And that's why when the sun is in one of those constellations, they say that that's when you're born there, or at least that's what it's supposed to be.
Question.
Yes?
Where does all this fit in with astrology?
Well, see, astrology is a whole different deal. And I don't know almost anything about astrology, but they do it differently. And the real one, where you're born, these are all different widths, and they're the actual width of the constellation. In astrology, they do every 30 degrees, so 12 times 30 is 360. And they call them signs, and I don't understand that. This is a clock, so what I do is a clock. And I'm not saying that they influence you. In astrology, they say, aha, the planet's here, it's going to influence you this way. That may be true, I don't understand that. So I look at it like, it'd be like if you watch somebody every day, and he looked at his watch, and it's, oh, time for lunch, and he runs for lunch, and you watch it every day. You might say, that thing on his wrist is influencing him, and the power of noon made him hungry. I'm not trying to make fun of astrology. I'm just saying you could make that kind of a comparison. And I'm saying, hey, it's just a clock. So that's all I know. I think there is something to astrology. I just never studied it. But the people I know that do get a lot of mileage out of it. But they don't do this. They don't do where the sun really is. They do it where it was a long time ago. Anyway, this is the clock. There's 300. This is in the book of Enoch. He says there's 364 servants of God and 364 stars, and every servant is mapped to a star. Many years ago, I figured out the big four, the four corners of the earth, are the bull and the scorpion and the lion and the waterman, or the Aquarius, the water bearer. And those are the four corners of the earth. Those big four are people, and those are pretty obvious, I think, who they are. I'm right now working on getting the rest.
What are the four corners?
The big four. The big four. The lion is the big one. He's the king of all of them. He's Adam. And Joseph Smith said Adam is the head of the whole thing. Opposite, if you have a watch and it only has one thing on it, it'll be the 12, right? If it has two diamonds on it, where's the other one? The 6. The second most important is Noah is the water guy. Okay, so Noah's the waterman. The other two are the 3 and the 9. Enoch is number 3 over at the scorpion. He's the healer, it turns out. This is all in the book of Enoch. It tells what their jobs are. His job is the healer. And the healer is the serpent wrapped around the caduceus, right? That's Enoch's sign. It was Mercury, and the gods that Mercury would run around with a little. He was the messenger of the gods. That's Enoch. He was translated, and he was the messenger. And the white bull. White is the west. The bull is the symbol of a seer. Joseph Smith never said who the number 3 guy was. He said number 1 is Noah, number 2 is Gabriel, number 1 is Adam, number 2 is Noah. Joseph Smith, I believe, is number 3. He's the second counselor in the first presidency. Adam's the president, Noah's first counselor, Joseph Smith's second counselor, Enoch is the secretary. Enoch was called the scribe throughout his life. The Thoth in the scribe in the Egyptian.
So when you say bull, do you mean like the oxen that are in the temple that underlie?
Yes, and in the book of Enoch it says in the last days, these are also the 12 tribes of Israel. Everyone has on their banner one of these pictures. Every one of the tribes is born in a different sign. Okay, and in the book of Enoch it says in the last days all of them will turn into white bowls. So you go to a temple and look at the baptismal font, and there's 12 white bowls around. And I don't think anybody there knows anything about, oh yeah, that's in the book of Enoch, and it's prophesied. Yeah, we took that book out because it was kind of weird, you know. It's like nobody, I mean, the people that designed it, anyway, I'm just saying, anyway. White bowl is Joseph Smith and the kingdom of God in the last days. Okay, now this is like the breaking point. I have just, and see, it's already an hour and a half, and it's supposed to be 1 hour. I've just reviewed all the basic sacred calendars. There's about 8 of those, and then they all have a uniform version, so I got 16 altogether. Now I'm going to do, and I'll do it a little quicker, I'm going to try to do it in the next half hour, but the application of how are these things used. Give us more examples of who was born when, what did Jesus do. So should we just keep plowing forth for another half hour? If anybody has to go or something, just do it. I realize 2 hours is a long time and all. Okay, so Jesus begins his, this is just one example. This is one of the 9 points I was talking about. Jesus begins his public ministry. He's right at age 30. It's his 30th birthday. He's born at Passover. He starts, and this is in the Bible. It says he started at the Passover. It was his first public miracles. Remember the miracle at Cana, the water to wine? He said, it's not my time yet. They said, well, we want some wine. Okay, but hush, hush. Okay, it's not my time yet, see? His time was on Passover at age 30, right on his birthday. And that was the age you could start being a minister or something, whatever, in the Levite law. Age 30 was. And on his birthday that year, it's on the UE, stands for Uniform Enoch calendar. It's on the priest calendar. Oh, and the sacred round realignment. Yes. It turns out after exactly 30 years, those 3 calendars will realign. So they're all the same. And so he starts on his 30th birthday, and so all the wheels, chung, 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 are lined up. And then he goes and he's presented to the priest on Mother's Day, and this month, Mother's Day is on the 14th, right? Sunday's the 14th is Mother's Day. It was Mother's Day then. They didn't call it Mother's Day then. Whoever made up Mother's Day sure did a good job. It had to be a woman, you know, because they're intuitive and they get it right. But Mary takes, the book of Leviticus says that on the 40th day of the child's life, you take him to the temple, present him to the priest. On the 40th day is Sunday, the 14th of May, 1 BC. And appropriately at Mother's Day, she takes him to the priest. And guess who's on duty on the temple? There's 24 different families of priests that take turns. Yeshua is the name of the family. It's the Yeshua or the Jesus priest that's on duty. So she takes him to the temple, presents him to the priest, and it's the Jesus. Isn't that cool or what? See, I mean, this is... The Big Bang was really lucky, right? I mean, this is clockwork, folks. It's also when Yeshua, I said that, it's when spring. He begins preaching that day, does miracles at the temple, healings publicly. Anyway, so that's when she comes. And they have the Catholics have it's Candlemas. They have a day for this. They celebrate this. And we call it Groundhog Day. Let's see. Is that right? No. Groundhog Day is the other one, February 2nd. Well, May Day, I guess. It's the one that's... Anyway, all of these old things like May Day and Groundhog Day, they tend to go back to this kind of stuff. Anyway, moving right along. This shows the life of Christ on the uniform Enoch calendar. So from the day he's taken to the temple, not his birth, but a temple, presenting 40 days later, counting that as the beginning to his baptism, to his public ministry to the transfiguration, to the resurrection, are all 29 and a half uniform Enoch years, exactly a half, 2.5, 0.5. So that whole thing is types and shadows on the Enoch calendar. It's spaced out on it for exactly 33. Those will add up to exactly 33 uniform Enoch years, it says underneath. The life of Christ on Mercury cycles. From his birth to his baptism is exactly 93. And it's 11 from his baptism to resurrection. And see down at the bottom, I've got, it's 104 Mercury cycles and 103 Mercs, both of them right to the day. So his life is timed on that. And it's timed on on the Venus cycle too. It's mainly those three. The fall of Adam and Eve. The fall of Eve is first. We don't talk about the fall of Eve much. Right? If you want, I'll comment on that. But let's do this first. Fall of Eve is first, and it's on the day 13 serpent. That's pretty cool. And 0 autumn, and I don't know why I have the other one down. That's the day of the priest day. It's not one that I understand particularly. But then it's 2 weeks later. It's 1 week later that she offers him the fruit. And it's a week after that, 14 days later, that he partakes of it. And that's the day 1 storm on the sacred round. 14 autumn is tabernacles on the Enoch calendar. And 1 Jehoiarib is the first day of the priest cycle. By the way, the fall of, that's the fall of Adam, excuse me. The really beginning of time is a few years later, right at 4,000 years before Christ, is the beginning of mortality when they leave the garden. So they don't get kicked out immediately, it's a few years. And everything lines up, all of the sacred calendars line up at the beginning of time. The fall of Adam is the big one, I believe, because this is now just personal, just reading the scripture, what does it say? That's what I believe. Adam was given a commandment not to eat the fruit. When he did that, he broke the big commandment. It's the fall of Adam. There's nothing in the Bible that said God ever told her not to eat the fruit. Adam tells her not to eat it. She broke his law. And so if you look at what the cursing is, they both get cursings. And the church will always say, oh, this was all wonderful and meant to be. Yeah, it was wonderful and meant to be. But they didn't know that. I mean, they're breaking commandments. I mean, God knows we're going to mess up, and so he can do what he wants. But they did break commandments, and they sort of skirt around that a little bit. If you look at what her cursing is, it is she has to listen to her husband. Your husband will rule over you. And it has to do with she didn't listen to him. His cursing is, he gets the thorns and the sweat of his brow and all of that stuff. They get different cursings, but the big mess up, I think, really is Adam. Oh, and let me tell you what I won't say tonight. There's a whole series of these where the guy has to choose between listening to his wife and listening to God. And if you just read through the scriptures, it's all through it. And the way it almost always turns out is the wife is always right. And sometimes he listens to her and sometimes he doesn't. And the wife's doing all of this stuff. We got to swap hands here. And, you put some fur on so he'll think you're the other guy. That's bad, isn't it? Rebecca said, I will take the blame if there's anything that goes wrong here. Okay? Because she said, I know that Jacob's supposed to get the big blessing, not Esau. And Isaac's messed up on that. So we're going to do deception. Isn't that strange? And it's all over the place. Judah's wife goes and plays the prostitute to get the right lineage for Christ. Bible stories we can learn from, children. Anyway. So Eve really does the right thing, but anyway.
Question.
Yes.
So what you're saying, then, us husbands are really a cursing to our wives.
Well, we don't usually lead out in spirituality, you know. They're naturally spiritual. I decided years ago the reason the Lord put men in the priesthood and running the church is otherwise they wouldn't go to church. My friend adopted 2 children from Russia, and he went over to Russia to get them. No men are ever found in church. It's a women's thing. They look at it as a feminine thing. Why would a man go to church? And that was when I figured it out. I said, oh, I know where we go because we're in charge. Yeah. Anyway, let's do these. I'm going slower instead of faster. This one, this is showing father to son stuff. The name of Enoch's father is Jared. This is not the Jared in the Book of Mormon. That's who he's named for. Jared means baptism. Jared means go under the water. So Jared with the boats in the Book of Mormon is the guy that he's going to go under the water in the boats. Anyway, Jared is the father of Enoch. Between Jared's birth and his son's birth, which is right in Genesis, it's an exact number of sacred rounds. Then it's an exact number of Venus cycles from Enoch's born to Enoch's translated. Jared outlives him. Jared's the second oldest person listed in the Bible for age, 962 years. And he lives another exact number of years after the translation. Put it all together, and it's 8 times 13 times 13 sacred rounds, which is exactly 602 Venus cycles. Anyway, all this stuff is going on, and it's all between a father and a son, and it can be between the mother and the son, or a daughter. But all this, and it's going on with us too, by the way. I've got a spreadsheet on my website where you can type in your birth dates and your kids and see. And I think, I haven't studied it enough to say that I can prove it, but it appears that it's not just a random thing where if you have so many people, of course somebody's born on the same birthday. They'll have, a lot of them will have this, and there's 2 calendars that are most important for birthdays, the Hebrew calendar and the sacred round. Those 2, all the prophets, when I did those were the 2 that all the prophets were on all of those. Anyway, father-son stuff. This is another one. Jared and Enoch's, the ordination dates. In the section 107 of the Doctrine and Covenants, there's this whole place there where he tells you how old people were when they were ordained. These men, the patriarchs. And at first you say, okay, yeah, whatever, we'll skip over this. But then you start reading, it says, Seth is 65 or something, and Adam ordains. Okay, fine. See, the next guy, Enos, it says he's 134 years and 4 months. And you say, did I really need to know that? Is that too much information? and then it goes down, and it gets to Mahalalel. Of course, you all know and love Mahalalel, right? Our favorite story. No, you've never heard of it. Mahalalel is 496 years and 7 days old when he's ordained. I saw that and I said, okay, this was another aha. This is like the Aztec moment with the rising. I said, the other place, you shall live by every word that proceeds forth from the mouth of God. When is the last time you heard that quoted in sacrament reading, right? 496 years and 7 days. The guy's almost 500 years old. Who cares about a week here? Yeah. It turns out that you can figure out the exact day that all of these guys are, or that I could anyway. Somebody could figure out the exact days of every ordination date. If they just give the year, that was enough. The one that said 434 years and 4 months, what put me onto this is I had just worked on the Venus calendar and I realized 134 years was a Venus cycle. And then one of those just happened to read that scripture and I said, oh my goodness, it's a Venus cycle. And sure enough, that was the key. And if you had just looked at the birthdays, it could have either been 134 and you'd say, oh, how nice, he was ordained on his birthday. Or exactly 4 months to the day. And so that's telling you it breaks the tie on which one it is. And when you get down to Mahalalel, there's this perfect day on his 496th birthday. And it's like this wonderful bing, 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 9 stars, sacred calendar day. And the Lord's telling you that wasn't it. It was 7 days later. And you look 7 days later and it's not quite as cool until you know something. But when I first looked at it, it's like, I wouldn't have chosen it. That's the point. That 7 days was needed. Whoever was doing it couldn't have figured it out. At least I couldn't have figured it out. And so that's what that's in there for. So it's all there for a reason. It turned out, when I finally had all of them, there was one pattern that they all did, and it had to be the one that was 7 days later. Oh, I'll tell you one more thing. The pattern was they were all ordained on a holy day on the Venus calendar. Every one. I'll just tell you, I'm going to go longer.
We're fine with that. We're okay.
This is good stuff. So Joseph Smith one day says, I'm going to ordain my father to be the patriarch of the church. They're in the print shop. It's a Wednesday. They don't have their suits and ties on. And he ordains him on the 19th of December, 1833. You are now the patriarch. That was the same day on the Venus calendar that Enoch was ordained. And so he's following the pattern. I think he's just inspired. He's not saying, oh yeah, I really have a Venus calendar here on the side, and the Lord told me. It's just, he does what he feels, and that was the day to do it. Isn't it? This all the stuff's in my articles, but they're so long. Enoch's ordination. Oh, and their ordination ties into Jesus. Enoch is like, Enoch's name has to do with stuff like transfiguration. Jared's name is baptism. It means to go under the water. And it's an exact, these calendars, Jared ties into the day Christ is baptized. Enoch ties into the day he's transfigured. All of the names of those first 10 patriarchs mean something. And I haven't got it all figured out yet, but I got 2 of them figured out. Oh, and then the baptism of the earth. There's this thing in the church, we say the earth was baptized and the flood really covered all the mountains and it was by immersion. True. Noah's Ark Day is an exact number of all these cycles. So from Jared's ordination to Noah's Ark to the baptism of Christ, it's an exact number of multiples of 364 days. And look at this bottom one. I mean, from Jared to Christ, that's 260 is the number of the sacred round. It's an exact number of sacred rounds. And it's an exact number of the Enoch years and the Jubilee and the star are all 364s. All of those are going to line up again on the uniform version. And it's 13. I mean, all these sacred numbers. If you're a numbers guy, this drives you crazy at night. This is, all right, I think this is, hopefully with any like this is the end. Dates in the life of Christ. This is just 3. I did this slide way back when I think I only knew 2 or 3 calendars, and the 2 big ones are the Hebrew and sacred round. Those are the fundamental ones. The east and the west hemispheres. So Christ's birth it's really the evening before, but it's on the Hebrew calendar, the evening before is part of the day. Thursday, April 6th, 1 BC, it's birth of Christ. It's Passover on the Hebrew calendar. It's 1 reed on the sacred round. I told you that was noticed right at the front. And that was a bit of a clue to get started on this stuff. The baptism is on the day 13 water, and the Day of Atonement on the Hebrew calendar. That's why John was out giving a speech. That's why that's the holiest day of the year. It's a day off of work. John the Baptist is out doing his speech. He's got a big crowd. The perfect day to be baptized is the Day of Atonement. That's when you make reconciliation with God. Christ is baptized on the right day and all the other people that day. But that's why it was easy to get that date. The ministry of Christ starts 6 months later on Passover. 13 monkey. Monkey has to do with priesthood, and I haven't got that figured out. But John the Baptist starts on 1 monkey. I don't understand that, but it's the priesthood kind of a thing. The Transfiguration is on the day 13 light. That's when he was so light that he lit up. And it's on the day light. He was baptized on the day water. He goes to the spirit world and resurrects at Passover on the Hebrew, and 13 temple. Oh, the cute thing. The Lord doesn't like you to know stuff ahead. You know, he likes surprises, and the day and the hour you don't know. So he swapped two things. One reed is the symbol of the resurrection. Reed is symbol of resurrection. Temple is the symbol of birth. So he's born on the day symbolizing resurrection, and he resurrects on the day symbolizing birth. So that's a little cute little swap thing there. Because, well, you got the little kid in the cave with the donkeys, and you tell a few shepherds, it's a secret, right? You don't want everybody to know. The King of Kings is right over there. No, it's a secret. Oh, I thought that was the end. 3 baptisms. Yeah, we did baptisms. We're going to skip that and skip that. I did this, the strange scriptures of 496 years and 7 days.
Wow.
Father-son links. Everybody memorize that. You'll be tested on that. Those are the first 10 patriarchs, and every father is connected to every son on one of these calendars. And by the way, there's eagles all over the place. Speaking of eagles, Adam is born on the day eagle, and Enos is, and Jared, and Enoch. And anyway, I did this one. We got him in the ordination of the patriarch. Oh, Mary. We got to do a little equal time for the women here. Mary's birth and death dates align with Jesus. Okay, this is Mary and her son. Then hopefully I'll do Mary and these other women. She aligns with the women too. But look at all of this. Her birth date is a certain number of Mercury cycles to when they go to the temple, or it's on the Mercury calendar. A priest cycle to when the Magi come, a Venus cycle to when they go to Egypt. The day they go to, an angel tells them when to go to Egypt, and he says, stay here until I come and tell you when to come back. And so they weren't just going by their good feelings. They were making sure they didn't mess up. And when Venus was born in the west is the day they leave to go to Egypt. And it's 9 months that they're there. And when it dies, that's when they come back. And so they do these Venus cycles like a trip. You know, like this, Venus is doing a trip from birth to death. They're doing a trip into Egypt. I mean, there's all of this symbolism going on. From her birth to the baptism of Christ, to the transfiguration, and to her own death. Her death is recorded. She goes to England afterwards. There's a lot of traditions. She and Joseph of Arimathea, and he has a council of 12. They start a stake in England, and it's in Glastonbury. In Glastonbury, they have Mary's a stone marker for a grave, and it has her death date on it. So I didn't just do this with my magic calendars. I took that date, and that's where that date, and I have a paper on this. It'll be the Virgin Mary, look up that, and there's a whole paper on her. She's linked to Adam and Eve. Mary's huge. Her son is the Son of God, right? I mean, this is huge. It has to do with overcoming the fall. Look at this. And I always say Adam breathed because I don't want to get into whether he was born or not. Okay, there was a day he first breathed, and let's not go into where the body came from. So I call it his B-day.
Yeah.
For breathing day. Adam's B-day, and then you can use what you want. So that's from Adam's B-day to her death date is a certain number of years. I mean, this is 4,000 years. Look at all of those different 4,000 years from the fall of Eve to Mary's birth, from the Adam fall to Mary's death. All of those cycles line up. That's just on Adam and Eve. Okay, this is what I want to show you. Rachel, Rebecca, Miriam, which is Hebrew for Mary, and actually Mary is English for Miriam. They're both Hebrew, I think. And Leah and Rachel are twins, and so part of that is not really cheating, but they're twins. But anyway, Mary is tied to all of them. She's the hub of the wheel, and they all have something in common with Mary, even if they don't with each other. So all of these great women, but the ones that are impressive, I think I've got a slide on it. What's impressive is when you look at the husband and the wife, all of them, they're born on their death date. They're born on their death date, death of the birthday, the son is the birthday, all tied together. Same, Joseph Smith and Emma. There's one I just discovered yesterday. I haven't, I got to tell you about Emma. This is hot off the press, okay? I looked at Emma a few years ago, and here Joseph is cool, Mom and Dad are both cool, Hiram's cool, Samuel's cool. They're all on these like really cool, nifty, holy days. Emma was, sort of okay. So I didn't do much there because I didn't, want to make her look bad or something, and I didn't know it. Well, I didn't even know how the Hebrew calendar really worked totally until last month, a couple months ago. And the star calendar was just discovered. So yesterday I just happened to look again at Emma. And those are the big things, and ties exactly. Joseph is Mr. Winter Solstice, and you probably have heard that. He's born just after the winter solstice. On the Hebrew calendar, he's born exactly on the winter solstice. She is born on the summer solstice. She's the opposite. On the star calendar, he dies on the day of the big dog, Sirius. It's the brightest star in the sky, and that's his star, which is interesting. And it's in the twins. It goes with the twins. And there's a big dog and a little dog, and those are like the twin dogs. She is born on the day of the little dog on the star calendar. So she's somewhere in summer, big dog, little dog. That's cool. So finally, anyway, but all of them are that way. All of the big ones. And it's amazing how many different calendars they can all be the same on. Manna ceased on Good Friday. I'm only putting that in to show that Good Friday is actually a holiday. I've wondered about that until I just discovered it for myself. When I was growing up as a kid, we had hot cross buns on Good Friday, and put a cross and it turned out that goes back to ancient, the Assyrians or their goddess in this, Oster, or Easter, anyway. So I wasn't sure, is that real? Was that really a holiday? And the answer is yes. It's on 3 different sacred calendars. And it was the day that the manna stopped. That alone, so they tell you exactly in the Bible the day the manna stops. And that's when it was. Anyway, let's skip these. The fall, the burning, I already told you the burnings, the 2 different burnings. Oh, I told you about it was on the day of the Jubilee calendar, the day for burning. The fall, the burning of the 2 temples, or at least it's not the burning, actually it's the fall of Jerusalem. It was a month earlier, and the fall of Adam are both one's on one death and one storm, the others, they're both on one death on the Mercury calendar. It's more than this. There's 3 or 4 things that are the same on the fall of Adam and the fall of Jerusalem. So you got all of these things. Sarah dies, Isaac dies on Rebecca. Oh yeah, they die on each other's birthdays. Sarah dies on Abraham's birthday, Isaac dies on Rebecca's birthday, Joseph Smith dies on Lucy Mack's birthday, and Hiram dies. Jacob dies on Leah and Rachel's birthday. Joseph and Asenath are both born on Easter Sunday. Peter is crucified upside down. I'm not sure why he has his own constellation. For years I taught astronomy, and when you learn Astronomy 101, go out and look at the sky. The Northern Cross, which is in the stick figure there, is the same constellation as the Swan, except it's upside down. When I found out each of the 7 angels have a constellation, Peter's one of the big 7 angels. He has the keys to the kingdom of heaven. He was crucified upside down on the cross. It's been up there in the sky all this time. Oh, his picture is the swan. You have to know how the pictures work. He's the swan. He's the swan. The swan is the most beautiful. Beautiful means righteous. The most beautiful bird is the swan, most beautiful animal is the horse. Pegasus is up. There's all these things are up in the part of the sky is the heavenly part. Then there's the earthly part, which is the band of the zodiac, and then there's the bad part underneath where all those snakes and sea monsters and stuff live in the waters. Anyway, this stuff's in the constellations. Oh, no, too long. Noah's wife, amazing lady. She's born with him. The mother of Moses is amazing. Oh, I found out that I was wondering when Moses is alive, there's 7 holy days. But the Jews added a bunch of other holy days later. Hanukkah is added in 165 BC at the rededication of the temple, time of the Maccabees. Is that a real holy day or not? Were they just looking for another holy day? It is. It's a real holy day. 2 of the 12 tribes of Israel, 2 of the 12 sons, were born on Hanukkah. But they didn't know it back then. Oh, and one of them, Joseph Smith, has his own day. And nothing much happens on that until his martyrdom. In other words, you don't know when the big things are until they happen sometimes. And he's one of the big ones. It's the Feast of Dedication. It was on the day 1 temple. This is in the book. You can look in any encyclopedia. It'll say the exact day of the first Hanukkah, of the Feast of Dedication. And you look that up on my temple thing, on my calendar converter. It's the day 1 temple. It's 1 creation on Mercury. It's 1 quickening, the most holy day on the uniform Venus. It's exactly 102 Venus cycles before Christ. I mean, it's on all these other calendars too. And latter day, oh, let's not, no. Anchor day, no, it's time to end. Okay, this is all of them together. I just went through 7 anchor dates. I have an article. This one is on my best articles on my front page list, and it's called 12 Steps from Adam to Christ. And that's an overview of how I did these dates. And you start with something you know. And I'm going to start actually with the resurrection date is one of the most solid. All four Gospels tell you the exact day of the resurrection. Even the time. Before it's dawn on a Sunday morning, and they tell you the year of so-and-so and the year and the year. Scholars argue over that because they don't want to believe it. It tells you the date. They just don't believe it for other reasons. There's a few known dates. The Jeconiah's captivity. That is known right to the date. It was recorded in Babylon. Daniel was already in Babylon. He records the day that, I don't know if you know, Jeconiah, it's one of the falls of Jerusalem, where the Nebuchadnezzar gets fed up with the Jews who are not obedient, and he takes the king, Jeconiah, and puts him, but he's also called Jehoiachim with a CH. Anyway, that date is known from Babylonian records, as well as the Bible. They both say it, and they agree. So these are solid dates. You start with those, and you start doing these cycles that are in the scriptures, and you can work all the way back to Adam. And I got a whole paper on how to do that. So that one I have. What I don't have is an article that shows how all of the sacred rounds work. This one just does 2 calendars. The one is a Venus, the color green along the bottom. I guess it's green. I'm not good on colors, but I think that's green. Is Venus on the bottom, and the top one is the Hebrew. I just use 2 calendars, and I can go from the resurrection date back to the birth of Christ. I mean, the beginning of mortality in 4,000 when we see it's exactly 4,000 years to the quarter day from Adam to Christ. Anyway, so that, hopefully, with any luck, is the last slide. Okay, so the real work here is all of these tying together as a network where you can't move one, even a quarter day, because, gee, that was his son and his father and they're all tied together, and you can't, they're locked in as a group. That network of dates is a testimony of this whole system. Each anchor has a whole set of related dates. Those dates are related to other sets. That's 200 now. It's still around 200 dates. It testifies of God. It's all on my website, johnpratt.com. It's an archaic website, but it stands alone. It's not made with any handy-dandy, depend on somebody else stuff. So I can actually put the whole website on a CD-ROM and preserve it in case CD-ROMs keep working. Now computers don't even have them anymore. Anyway, it has 150 articles now, science, religion, blah, 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 spreadsheet. Anyway, that's where all of my stuff is. All right, there. All right, there's the introduction.
Question, have you done, in 3rd Nephi, unlike the other books in the Book of Mormon, in 3rd Nephi, when we get close to the Savior coming, it almost goes year by year by year.
Oh, I've sure done that, absolutely. Came out, that was my birthday present. It came out right about April 6th in 2000. Yes, I've done that. There's a paper on it. It all comes out, all the weird stuff. Why did some people say the year had come and others didn't? What do you mean they're arguing over whether the year had come? What are you talking about? How can that be? Well, we had these different years, right? And anyway, yes, the short answer is that all works out and it's born and yes. And I can, are those refreshments I see?
No, it's a blanket.
Oh, blanket, all right. That kills my line. I was going to say, let's rush to the refreshment. All right, in that case, I can answer a few questions. Whatever, if people need to go. Usually I'll say do the refreshments and then we'll do questions and then everybody forgets. So that didn't work. If there's a few questions, we can have a closing prayer so people can go and whatever you want.
John, I just have one last question. You were mentioned earlier today that the 4 corners actually represents the 4 stars of the earth.
Yeah, there's 4 stars in heaven that are 90 degrees apart.
Is one of them North Star and the other, do they have names? Or
Yeah, they have names. Again, I got papers on all this. In the bowl, the name of the star is Aldebaran, and it's the eye of the bowl. It represents seer. When you see, it's the eye. In Leo, the lion, it's named Regulus. It's at the heart of the bowl, and it has to do with it's the king that has wisdom in his heart, like Solomon has wisdom and he's king. The third one, Enoch or Raphael, these all have, is Antares, big red star, the heart, and that is the heart of the judge, who is the scorpion. That's really the Solomon one. A judge has to have a heart of wisdom, to be wise enough to know, hey, let's cut the kid in half, and and all that stuff. That's way smarter than people. That comes from the heart. Anyway, the heart of the scorpion is Antares, and the last one, the water one, is called Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut, and it's in the head of the fish. And the fish represents the church, and the head is like the head of the church. And it represents intelligence. That's the teacher. Aquarius is the teacher. And I just discovered like last month when the age of Aquarius starts. Oh, that's another whole thing. They have those ages they do in astrology. Those are real ages in astronomy. And we're in the age of Aquarius. Have been since the Kirtland Temple. And Noah's the head guy of that. Why am I telling you this? Head age of Aquarius. Water. This Book of Mormon, it's right in the Doctrine and Covenants, section 110. The Lord comes, appears in the Kirtland Temple just before the other 3 men do. And he says, this is the beginning of the pouring out of a blessing onto your heads. Aquarius is pouring out water onto the head of the fish. That's the blessings on the head of the fish. The fish is the church. I mean, all of it. And so the Lord's talking about the age of Aquarius, and nobody's recognized that that I know of. And by the way, all these ages are in the Bible. They're all over in the Bible once you learn what they are. It's all over the place.
What's the name of your article that you were talking about, the Book of Mormon, when the Lord comes to the Americas? What's the name of the book? Right, in 3rd Nephi, what's the name of the article that you wrote about?
Say just a little more.
The question I had earlier about the years being specific in 3rd Nephi.
Third Nephi. Yeah, it's called the 600-year prophecy, Lehi's 600-year prophecy. And people, BYU studies guys, they've written so many articles on that. Is this thing, they're so lost. They write 50-page articles, and they just rehash what other scholars have said. And they propose all these different calendars that have never existed to explain that stuff. Anyway, so that's the article, and it'll take you all through exactly the different, it explains, I believe, everything. You have to know how the Nephite calendar worked, and it was not the calendars that they suggest.
Have you found any correlation with that time period and our time period? As far as...
Oh, yes. The whole Book of Mormon's for us.
Yeah.
All those wars in Alma. Why does he spend so much time on wars? Of course, we'll never have wars, right? We're too civilized,
That's right.
right, to have wars.
We're done with those.
But, the strategies. And I don't understand it all. I'm not a war guy. But I know that book is for us. And when he's decided, Mormon, is deciding what to put in and what not to, it's for us. And the Lord chewed us out in 1832 and said, "You're not taking the Book of Mormon seriously." And the prophets have said ever since. I teach high priests in my work, and we just had a lesson on it again. We still are under condemnation. We still don't take it seriously enough. It is loaded with. When I was on a mission, I thought, well, you start with the Book of Mormon because that's just like stories of, we crossed the desert. But the good stuff's in the Doctrine and Covenants, Revelations for us in English, But, and now I'm back to, Book of Mormon is on all these different levels. And it's, I think they all are. But I'm not going to say it's not beginner stuff, folks. It's really deep material in the Book of Mormon. Okay, I will, wait a minute, there was one other, let's see, what was that thing before we break up? Anyway, we can break up and I can still stay after for a few questions, but it's not coming to me, so it must not be too important. Anyway, you've been a great audience, and there you go.